Hey ladies and gents, this is the Video Gaming Maestro, and welcome to my very first video here on YouTube. Now this is a channel dedicated to my love of music and my passion for video games. So if you stick around, we're going to be learning all about the chord progressions and the melodies behind some of the greatest pieces in music to truly figure out what makes them so good. So today, we're going to be tackling my favorite all-time theme from any video game. That's the main theme from Final Fantasy VII. So stick around and let's give it a listen. The year was 1997. Good old Clinton was president, the economy was booming, and it was a year filled with grunge bands and all the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers that you would ever need. Or want. The Nintendo 64 was erupting onto the gaming market, and kids all over the world were experiencing a new kind of gaming that they had only experienced at arcades. They enjoyed countless hours playing games involving a certain overall-wearing plumber. But close behind was a similar giant that would change the gaming industry forever. This was the year that Square would release its best-selling 7th game from its long-standing franchise, that of course being Final Fantasy. Just 2 years prior, in 1995, Sony introduced the PlayStation console, and with it several games that were enjoyed by thousands. Games such as Crash Bandicoot, Spyro the Dragon, Metal Gear Solid, and of course Final Fantasy VII. With its 3D graphic capabilities and incredible audio software, it dramatically changed the gaming experience. Now, sound design became something new, and the music became hella good. This gave composers more room for creation. They could compose entire orchestral pieces and compress it onto these audiovisual CDs. The industry went from this to this. Pretty different, right? Now to talk about this giant. Like I said a second ago, Final Fantasy VII was released by Square in September of 1997. It was a massive game on 3 discs with well over 40 hours of playtime. Immediately, people fell in love with the gameplay, the plot, the characters, just everything about it. It was a narrative like no other, utilizing tragedies, plot twists, and a development that made the player so immersed into the world of Gaia. Alongside all these elements, there was something in the background that made the player feel something. Something that added to the cohesiveness and worked alongside the visual masterpiece that was Final Fantasy VII. It was the incredible music composed by the legend Nobuo Uematsu. Final Fantasy VII has a soundtrack unlike any other game of its time. The multiple themes, the multiple stylistic choices, and overall emotion of these songs made you feel something deep. From genres spanning from medieval to Native American, Uematsu had a song for every aspect of the game. The songs were triumphant, mysterious, stressful, sad, happy, and of course, romantic. They ran the gambit on the emotional path, and Uematsu made the point across. He utilized many theoretical elements to drive the musical response home to its listeners. In a famous scene, during the death of a beloved character, there sounds a theme that is sad, but still manages to be endearing and hopeful for the future, utilizing elements of melodic major runs and heavily orchestrated minor backgrounds that grab the listener, tear its heart out, and then make them admire that very heart. But that's a theme for a different day. Today, I want to tackle the main theme. The first time that you hear the main theme is actually the first time that you get to see the world map. Here you are, spending all this time in the dirty, dark, nasty, monster-infested city of Midgar, and you get to leave it, and then boom, you're struck with this dark atmosphere and this vast world of Gaia that you know nothing about, that you're traveling about, and then you hear this theme, and it just strikes you.
What are you doing?
I'm stricken.
Gosh, he's listening to that song again.
Okay, so let's break down this melody, okay? So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna talk about that main theme, right? So the main melody of the song. I don't want to talk about the whole song because it's just massive, and it'll take hours for me to break down every little chord progression and every change in the melodic structure. So we're gonna stick to the main melody, which is this. Okay, so now if you notice, we are in the key of E major, which I think can be described as like a very full sounding key. You know, we got 4 sharps in it, which are F, C, G, and D, all of which kind of add a little bit more tension, a little bit more, you know, this fulfilling kind of nature. So in breaking that down, so remember that, so we're in the key of E major as the main theme. And basically the majority of this progression is more or less, I want to say about 15 notes or so. And the big thing to note about this is that the first majority of it and the latter half of the melody, we're moving in stepwise motion. Okay, so we're just going from one note to the next to the next. Now there's two kinds, you know, we get steps and we get skips or leaps, which is when we, you know, skip multiple notes. So instead of moving scalarly, you know, just walking up the scale, which is kind of what he does for the beginning. So he goes. So, you know, when we start listening to that, especially people that are so molded into hearing that kind of format, we tend to want to do this, right? Which, I mean, is nice, but it's not the same. It's not the same. So what he does is he tricks our senses, right? So he's moving upward, but then he jumps to this high note. He jumps to a D sharp. Now, typically, within the key of E major, this D sharp is a leading tone. Okay, so that means it's the last note in the upper register before we jump back to the octave, right? You know, we go back to that high E. And the cool thing about that is what that does, that note is a very, very tense note. So when you hear it, typically within this context, like we really want to hear it go back to E, right? So it has a resolution. It wants to resolve back to the home key, which is of course E. So he kind of he utilizes that note as a means of creating this tension, this awareness. That's whoa. Okay, so I thought we were just walking up, but in reality we're jumping up to this high note, and then we fall back down. So it's kind of this like tension and this release in a way that we don't really, we don't truly feel. Like we have a tendency to want to jump up, but he doesn't do that. He goes back. And then goes back to the beginning. A similar jump, but not as large. For going back down. It's a beautiful melody. Then underneath it, what's happening is we're getting these kind of chordal progressions and changes, which are really, really interesting. So what we kind of see, in typical, fashion, the very first chord is we have an E major chord. But then the next step, typically what we'd see is we jump to a 4 or the 5, which in this case would be an A or a B, which is kind of, you know, a typical progression. But what he does is he jumps to the minor 6, which is still, you know, kind of common, but it is slightly different. So we have an E major, if we're going back to E, but then when he goes back, he does something a little different. So now instead of going back to the C sharp minor again, what he does is he does a C major 7, which is really interesting. So this note is not in the key, you know, this chord is not in the key of E major. So typically we would have, you know, E, A, B, C sharp, E. But here, what he does, he goes E, C sharp minor, E, but then he does a C natural major 7. Okay, so that's what's known as a borrowed chord, and he borrows it from the neighboring key of E minor instead of E major. So what that does is it kind of creates this, again, this kind of victorious sounding progression, which is, again, is kind of common to do in orchestral themes. So we have E, C sharp minor, E, C natural major 7 to a D major 7. Okay, and now this D, you know, we already talked about, it's D sharp, typically in the key of E major. So for him to jump up and to do, you know, to lower that note to a D is really interesting. It's really interesting. So. You know, if I were even just to strum this progression by itself, right? You know, it just has this incredible sense of victory, of triumph, of fulfillment, you know, which is exactly the story behind, you know, behind Cloud, right? So he's this kind of broken soldier who's trying to like figure out who he is amidst all of this chaos within the world, and then he becomes to fulfillment. He realizes who he is, and you know, eventually achieves the goal of saving the planet, which is really cool. So that's kind of the theme. That's the melody. The melody and the harmony amongst that. So it's a really neat, a beautiful theme, and I love it so much. Alright guys, so in conclusion, this was an incredible theme, incredibly nostalgic, instantly recognizable. You know, it's a theme that is very deceptive, and Nobuo Uematsu has utilized a lot of these thematic elements to truly make it an incredible theme. You know, he does things that are typical, but then he instantly tricks you, you know, and it becomes no longer predictable, okay? So I'm going to give this a rating system as I do with all of my videos that I'm going to do. And I'm going to give this a 7 limit breaks out of 7. Okay, so thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you made it to the end, you're a champ. Really. Hopefully, you know, this is more of an experimental piece. I intend on doing more videos, but I don't know if I'm going to keep the same format. So let me know if you liked it. You know, leave a comment and a like. I would really appreciate that. And maybe even consider subscribing. Would mean a lot to me. And also, I do have a Patreon at Video Gaming Maestro, and a Twitch. So you know, follow me, and if you want to give and donate, that would be incredible. There are some perks with that, and you know, it would mean a lot, because the desire for me and the hope, my dream, is to be a full-time creator. Now I'm just starting out, so bear with me. But the next video I plan on doing, I'll just give you a little hint. The theme involves a lot of traversing. Okay, so hopefully you liked it. You know, I got some other videos on the channel, just some Let's Plays of my Twitch streams. And again, just let me know what you think, alright? So, yeah. Alright guys. Ladies and gents, this has been the Video Gaming Maestro, and we'll see you in the next video.